Hi, welcome to the Armchair Expert. Today is a big treat. By popular demand and just my own selfish desires, Lauren Graham's going to join us. She is, I guess I'll say I'm her TV brother, not she's my TV sister. I should give her the status position as it's well-deserved. She probably was most known from Gilmore Girls. You know her from there. She's Lorelai. My brother's in love with her. I think to this day, he still is in love with her. And we spent 6 glorious years together on Parenthood. In addition to her being an amazing actress, she is also a thrice-time published author, I believe. And her current book is called, Monica?
In conclusion, don't worry about it.
And when does that come out?
Today.
Today. In conclusion, don't worry about it. It comes out today. So sprint out to your...
Barnes & Noble, Amazon.com.
You don't have to sprint to Amazon, but you know what we're saying.
Sprint to your computer.
Check this book out. She's a hell of a writer. She's just all around a extremely intelligent, thoughtful, wonderful woman that I am grateful to know. And I hope you enjoy it.
He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert.
You are?
Yeah, I'm going to be your podcast guest every week.
Oh, good.
I hope you didn't have anybody else booked because I'm going to...
No. Well, we did, but we can easily cancel that.
Okay, good.
But yes, welcome to my attic in my construction zone.
I love it.
Yeah. It kind of makes me think of like movies where it's set in Vietnam, but then they go into the general's tent and there's like candles lit and it's kind of nice. I feel like we're in this little oasis among a lot of pounding and drilling. And
I mean, I've been there, so I completely relate to the construction situation. Oh, this is what I dreaded. I look so bad right now.
You look so beautiful as you always do.
There's a man trying to take a candid photo.
You could be in a sleeping bag and your personality would be bursting
I
through
essentially
the zipper.
am in a sleeping bag. I'm on the way to the barber shop.
Yeah,
to get my hair did.
You're getting your hair done.
Yeah.
What's that process like?
It's
Is it
so
a team
many
of people?
hours. It's so many people. It's so many hours to make me look exactly the same. No, I have a colorist who I love named Sean Metcalf, and but I just to get brown.
They take you to platinum, then build you back up to brown.
Right. Exactly right. It's a lot of wiggery and no, it just takes a long time, and I have to do it all.
And what is a long time? A couple hours?
Couple hours.
It is.
Yeah, and that's like without. This is. I hope. Can we just talk about hair the whole time?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's one of the main focuses of the podcast.
A hair podcast.
Yeah. It was totally lacking in the marketplace.
Yes,
Hairbrush.
it's true.
Although now that I say that, I have to assume that Chaz whatever has a podcast.
Oh,
the guy
he
who
probably
owns,
does.
because he's got billboards everywhere.
Chaz Dean.
Chaz Dean.
I run into. He doesn't know me, but I run into Jeff. What's his name? Who I love. Who does that show? The Flipping Out show.
Okay.
What's his name?
I don't know. Jeff Bridges.
Yes, Jeff Bridges.
Jeff Bezos.
Yes.
Am I getting close?
I'm gonna think of his last name.
Okay. But he has he's not friends with Chaz Dean, is he?
Chaz Dean is like a recurring character on this show because
he is.
Because Jeff redoes his studio, and then for one reason or another, like once one burned down, once there was a flood, like it's almost like
he's riddled with
they're
bad
looking
luck.
for reasons to have Chaz Dean back on the show, so he just keeps redoing. I think he moved once, like he's always on the show.
Okay, so Chaz Dean, if you don't know, he makes a hair product. When?
Yes,
is that what it is? And I don't know if that's popular countrywide,
I think it is.
But
they sell it on QVC and stuff. It's like a non-lathering shampoo thing.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a great product.
Yeah.
This is nothing to say
Are
anything
we being
about the
sponsored
product
right now?
Well, no. What we did is we just got rid of Pert being a sponsor.
Oh.
Because we're talking so much about Chaz Dean.
Was Pert a sponsor?
No, but we just got rid
I
of that
see.
option.
Everyone's a possible sponsor.
But back to Chaz Dean,
Yeah.
he has a lot of billboards here in
Yeah.
Los Angeles that just has his face on it.
Yeah.
It looks like me and Seth Green had a child.
Wow, that's kind of true.
He weirdly is like a cross-pollination of Seth Green and I.
But you're a cross-pollination of so many people.
Zach Braff,
yes,
clearly.
and whoever.
Yeah.
And
Name like a stud. I
Brad
find when
Pitt.
people...
I think Zach Braff
it's kinda
is
like
studly.
Zach Braff and Brad Pitt.
that is true.
Yeah.
That is possible.
That's it?
so.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I'll
I think
take
that's
it.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah. A big dose of creative and
Yeah.
then legendary sex symbol status.
Sure.
I like it.
Yeah.
Wait, real quick. Chaz Dean, it's more, the billboards are more than just his face. You see his body and he's wearing 2 vests or 2 ties
A
or
couple
2 jackets.
yeah.
There's one thing that he's wearing 2 of, and it is so disturbing.
It's kind of like a riddle.
It is.
When you look at it at high speed, you got to think like, what was he wearing 2 of? He had 2 glasses on, I think. No, he had 2 neckties.
But only in Los Angeles is there a possibility that your trainer, your hair person may in your lifetime become more famous than you.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like I've been bumped by makeup artists who are just too
Yes.
too famous
Yes.
to do.
You didn't make the cut anymore.
No.
Yeah, the guy who I bought Kristen's engagement ring off of is now that. He's a national celebrity, and I think he's a spokesman for like K Jeweler or something.
really?
Neil Lane.
Oh yeah.
Do you know him?
Well,
Everyone knows Neil
I don't know him
Lane.
personally, but that's not like the same thing. He was like a famous jeweler.
Yeah.
What do you mean
But
you
he wasn't
bought
on
the ring off
commercial.
of him? It sounds like
I
you like
did.
pulled a guy over.
I
on
met
the
him
side
behind
of the road.
Arby's.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, there's Arby's on Sunset.
Yeah,
in the alley.
Arby's on like Rodeo Drive. Neil Lane's got like a very swank
Okay, great.
situation.
I wasn't meaning to imply I discovered him. He certainly was an existing Beverly Hills
Right. Yes.
fancy pants
But
jeweler.
now he has
But now
commercials.
he's he's nationwide.
But so do you. Yeah. But so are you.
Okay, so I guess I'm keeping pace with Neil Lane.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm in a shootout with Neil. But he's representing a mall jewelry store now, right?
Yes.
Is that
I think so. I think,
Okay.
yeah.
I've only been to a
Jewelers.
K.
Another sponsor.
yes. Every wish becomes a cake. I don't even know
Yeah.
the words, but that's the jingle, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Lauren, what's really fun about this is I often have friends on and then I read about them. And then there's all the stuff that even in 10 years of friendship,
Yeah.
I had no idea about. And then it's kind of fun for me.
Uh-huh.
One of them is that you're born in Hawaii.
Correct.
This makes 0 sense.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Because I think of you as a Virginian.
Yes. Well, I was mainly raised in Virginia, but the first couple of years were colorful. My dad took an aptitude test when he was in maybe the first year of law school. And the only language he'd ever taken was Latin. And for some reason, he like responded to a sort of thing on a bulletin board, which was test your aptitude to learn Vietnamese. It's a very tonal, very complicated language. And he took this test and scored very high and kind of put that together with, I'm sure, some feelings of, I don't know if it's guilt or, the Vietnam War was going on at the time. It was 1966. It was the height of everything. And he was in school and married. So he wasn't going to be drafted, but I think he felt compelled to help in some way. So he went to work for an organization called AID, which is Aid to Internationals in Distress, which is a division.
AID.
Yes.
That became unfortunate.
Became something else.
AIDS.
Yes, that's
I was
right.
like, wait, he started an umbrella company, Herpes. You got to remember, this was long before herpes was discovered.
Yes. So it was, it's that maybe why they referred to it as AID and not AID. But
He went to the sunglass company, sickle cell anemia. They were the most fashionable sunglasses.
that reminds me for some reason of one of my favorite stories about Matthew Perry, which I can never tell properly, but I did a movie with Greg Kinnear about the guy who invented the intermittent windshield wiper.
Yes.
Right.
That our friend directed.
Flash of Genius that our friend directed. Mark Abraham, who I love. I had also done a movie with Matthew that year, and we were both in Sundance. So we did our press together. And every time somebody would ask me about the movie, about the guy who invented the intermittent windshield wiper, and then they'd say to Matthew, what are you working on? He's like, it's so weird because I'm working on, then that little hole on that you put your shoelace through on the shoe? It's the guy who invented that. And like throughout the day, he just kept making up like more random things.
A more boring
yes, that's right.
biopic.
Yes.
First human to ever
Oh my
yawn.
God. But it's one of those things that it's so particular to his sense of humor, but like I must think of it like once a week. I laughed so hard, and that's what sickle cell anemia
That's his
is making me
superpower,
think
right?
of. Yes. So anyway, my dad went to Vietnam, but on his way, he had a 3-month intensive language school in Honolulu, Hawaii.
Because the Navy was doing it? Is that why? Because there's a Navy base there, obviously, right?
I
Pearl
don't
Harbor.
know why there in particular wasn't. AID
Was it
is
military related though?
Well, AID is an offshoot of the CIA, which over the years, I know, and there were some embedded spies. So, which is another thing that to me is hilarious because my father is well known for like putting like cameras and coffee mugs and like glasses on top of the car and like driving away. And like I never owned a house key because everybody lost their keys all the time. So we just ended up, we'd leave the cars open. We'd leave the door open. So the idea that like
he would have been
it could be like a sitcom on ABC. It's like the most forgetful guy in America is also their top spy. By the way, sold.
Yeah, I'm in.
So that's why I was born in Hawaii, but I was only there for 3 weeks. And then my dad left for Vietnam and my mom and I went back to Japan, which is where she had lived for many, many years because her parents
were missionaries.
Yes, her parents were missionaries.
That sounds like it's out of a 18th century storybook. Yes. That doesn't sound possible.
They were pioneers, you know, and there weren't many people trying to convert the Japanese into being Southern Baptist.
It's so weird. I know. It seems so.
And it didn't totally catch on, but my grandparents did start a church that still exists in Sendai, Japan.
Were they in any way related to the military? Because there was also all these people that stayed there after World War II, right? There's a huge
but no, it was just part of the Baptist church outreach.
My grandparents were Southern Baptists.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Even though we were in Michigan, they still were Southern Baptists. And my brother and I went. And the only thing that made it tolerable is that occasionally you got to yell amen. Right. It was always very delayed. Like we were waiting for a few adults to do it. And then my brother and I would do it. And then my Papa Bob would like pinch us really hard to stop us from saying, because once we started the amens, almost any sentence warranted an amen in our opinion.
Well, I mainly grew up with my dad, who was raised Catholic. And my dad's like the quietest man. And the Catholic Church, you do not yell amen. So then I'd go and, you know, my grandfather was also a pretty mellow guy, except when he was up preaching. And then he
fire and brimstone.
Caught the spirit. And so.
He never spoke in tongues, did he?
No, he didn't. No, I know. I'm so close.
I'm looking for 1 degree of separation from someone who speaks in tongue.
I'm sure you can find them. You don't see that anymore.
It's just not as popular as you want. And I hate that it's relegated only to the church. I would love to be at the McDonald's drive-thru and the person's like, let me just read this back to you. That's a Big Mac with extra sauce, extra cheese. What's
the concept behind speaking in tongues again?
I think the Lord is speaking through you.
The Lord is speaking?
Again, I don't know fucking a thing about it. But luckily, Monica fact checks us.
Oh, really?
Because invariably, I'll spout a bunch of data that I learned 20 years ago. And so it's probably not correct.
Right.
And then she will.
What data are you spouting?
Just stick around. I will be nailing you with like the distance between here and the sun, 93 million miles, or here and the moon, 180,000 miles.
Peter knows all that stuff.
Yeah, he and I often like to get in just a number off.
Yeah.
Where we'll just, he says a number and I respond with another number. But I do believe it is that the Lord is speaking through you. And then, of course, he doesn't speak English. He doesn't want to be.
So obvious.
He doesn't want to tip his hand to who he likes the most. I mean, I think it would be English.
Right.
Just given the tradition of it. But
it's an nonsensical language that we have left to us to decipher.
It's too powerful.
We already have that.
And Father, I bet your father would have tested really high phonetically.
Yes,
on
exactly
speaking
right.
in tongues.
That part of the story in my own life has always been glossed over. Like, first of all, what is that test? That tests your ability to learn to speak Vietnamese
without knowing it. Yeah. Like, I guess there's noises that they make.
But I don't remember it being an oral test. But I've been to Vietnam with my dad. We did a bike trip there, and he can still speak. He speaks to the kids. Yeah. And people are shocked.
And what's interesting is I knew you had gone on that trip with your father because you did it in the hiatus of one of our seasons, like between 4 and 5 or something.
Yeah.
What was he doing there with his new Vietnamese?
So
I'm not even pronouncing that.
You're really
this is a word that
that
Kristen
was.
always gets on me. I add a something, right?
No, say it again.
Vietnamese. No, I'm adding a ma.
That's international coffee.
Oh.
Vietnamese.
Oh, okay.
Vietnamese.
Viet money.
No. It's an N, not an M.
Viet mayonnaise. Did I get it?
No.
Yeah, you're
Perfect.
there.
It's great.
Clearly, I would have tested very poorly on the test. They would have not sent me.
They had supplies. They would help people rebuild. Peace Corps adjacent. But this is part of our trip. There was someone who was sitting in a park bench who probably just because we were Caucasian people and that was an unusual sight, yelled something. But I so wanted somebody to walk up to him and be like, Larry, you helped me that day. You know, I
Yes,
wanted the like
yes.
movie version
Yeah,
for
of
him.
course. Yeah.
And it was not that, but it was just,
Couldn't you have paid someone on the side?
I probably could have.
Yeah.
You would
If
have
like,
staged
just got up
a really great
Yeah,
event.
just got up an
Yeah.
hour earlier than him.
yeah, I know.
At the
Darn
hotel
it.
and went downstairs.
He wouldn't have known the difference. He
Yeah.
would have been like, yeah, Phil, of course I remember you.
Yes.
You know,
And how long was he there?
he was there for about a year and a half. So that was the first
Without
year and a
you
half
guys.
of my life. Yes.
That's mind-boggling
It is.
to me. Yeah.
Now, you know, they were so young when they got married.
Oh, how
they were
young?
22 and
Oh,
23.
yeah.
And I think the whole thing was a little bit of a improvised situation.
Yeah.
So I was with my grandmother, my mom.
Your mom's mom.
Yes.
And that's why
in
she probably
Japan.
went to Japan because she wanted some help.
That's right.
right.
And so, yeah, I lived for the first year and a half of my life in Tokyo. And then
Which, of course, you have no memory of, right?
I feel like I do, but it's that thing where there are a few pictures of me from that time,
Exactly.
and I maybe think, and I do remember because they had a kind of a nanny to the kids, Sato-san, and I remember that presence. I remember this that person taking care of me, so I feel like I have some sense of that time.
Yeah. And then you guys all meet back up in
Yeah.
Virginia. Is that what happens?
Then my father came to Japan, and we they took a ship back through Russia.
So what I'm very confused about,
Yeah.
just geographically, and
Yeah.
again, this is where Monogo will come in, but my understanding of where Japan is and where Moscow is, I have no idea how Moscow's on the way
Wow,
back.
I don't really either.
Like,
Also,
did you guys take a train, the Trans-Siberian Railroad
know.
to Moscow? Because it's very far east.
maybe they were like, we're, reunited. Let's sail around the world. I don't know. Also, I know that I got chicken
Let's
pox.
rekindle this romance in fucking Soviet Moscow.
No. Plus, I got chicken pox on the boat, and there are lots of stories of them going to dinner and stuff like on the boat. And I was like, wait, I had chicken pox. And I'm just like by myself, and in the
Sleeping it
thing, and
off.
They were like, she's probably fine. It's the 60s. She'll be okay.
Yeah, she needs a
She'll
long
live.
nap.
Yeah.
That'll take care of it. But it is curious, right? Because I accumulate all these stories as you do of my things my parents did when I was young. And they made perfect sense until I'm now then their
Right.
age, or I'm now older than them. And they start to make zero sense to
Right.
me. And that's got to be one of them. But I would imagine it's very peculiar from my point of view that you would take a year and a half off as newlyweds with a
Yeah.
new baby, right? So do you think that was at all a clue as to what their relationship was like at that time?
Probably. I think it was also, and I mean this in the most kind way. I think my dad was just deeply freaked out.
Fuck yeah. When you're 22
yeah.
and this is now,
yeah.
yeah.
And we get closer and closer to exactly what that decision was, and sort of even how they came together. My dad's mother famously, when he came home and said, I'm getting married, she said, but Larry, you've never even had a girlfriend. Like, what do you, he was he played sports. He's extremely smart.
Yeah.
And also my mother's a very special person. And he always says about her, like, just one in a million. He'd never met anybody like her. And I think it just knocked him over in any number of ways. And then, by the time he came back, she was ready to leave pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't together for very long.
And that was in Virginia.
You really are dying to get us to Virginia because no.
It's such an exotic place. Why would I want to talk about Japan or Russia or Vietnam when I could be talking about Virginia? So my mother fell off the boat and had to be ready. Yeah, but I'm assuming she made it to Virginia though, right? We don't need to know about the helicopter rescue or anything.
We lived first so the house I remember was in Southampton in Long Island because my dad's parents were in Long Island. And then I think they split up, and then we lived on a houseboat in the Virgin Islands.
My goodness. This is
Just
a
me and
one
my
step
dad.
away from Swiss Family Robinson,
I
this
know.
story. Yeah,
That's
inordinate
true.
amount of boats in
Well,
your
I remember
background.
living on the houseboat because I remember the feeling of being seasick. Like it was a docked boat, kind of like where Crosby lived in Parenthood.
Yeah. I should have called your dad for
I know.
research. Although I
For
have
school.
to imagine the bachelor experience on a houseboat is drastically different than new family on a houseboat. That sounds like a nightmare.
We had a tiny boat, and he has, however old I was, it's
I'd
not
be
a
thinking
babe
you're going to
magnet.
fall in
Yeah.
all the time.
I don't remember him ever worried about that.
Oh, that's how liberating for him.
I mean, I'm
we live
sure
on
he
land,
did.
and I'm nervous that they'll fall in the pool. I can't
I was
imagine.
always pretty self-sufficient. I'm sure after the whole chickenpox thing, I'm sure they're like,
Yeah.
she's fine.
Yeah, she's indomitable.
Yeah. But I would get picked up for daycare or school or nursery school or whatever in a motorboat in like a little
This
boat.
is so interesting.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And then we kind of bounced around. We lived in Manhattan, and then my grandparents now were back in the States and we're living in DC. And I think partially because of that,
here
and
we
partially
come.
because he got a job working on Capitol Hill. That's when we moved to Georgetown. Didn't get there. Not there yet. Not there yet.
So close. We're so close.
And then we moved to Arlington, and then the rest of it was in Virginia. Woo! Northern Virginia.
Boy, do we love Virginia.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
But at 5, am I right? 5?
Yeah.
Your mom and dad get divorced.
Yeah.
And she moves to England.
Right.
Which, again, from my perspective now,
Yeah.
that's a crazy choice.
Yeah. I always feel with my mom, she was kind of in the wrong time. Do you know what I mean? Like, she was not quite as traditional as someone who had grown up in the 50s, because she had all this exotic life experience and she spoke a foreign language. She traveled and, you know, she still had enough traditional sense that she wanted to get married. And then I think got there and was like, wait a minute, I don't even know who I am or what I want to do. So initially she was in art school in New York City. Then she had dabbled, tried to, you know, get cast in summer stock. You know, she had a sort of interest in acting, but she kind of didn't really stick with anything too much. And then, and I'm not sure if this was the first thing that brought her there, but she was in a series of pop bands.
Oh, really?
Yeah. She was a backup singer with her best buddy in a band called Goddess.
Okay.
And this is now England in the 80s. And I do have very strong memories of going to visit her during that time when she was trying to get this music career going. And I went with her to a couple of rehearsals and meetings, and it was very daunting. It was kind of scary, I have to say. You
How
know?
interesting that you would have witnessed that and then still chose to put yourself in that situation where you're basically
watching her go through what she went through gave me a healthy suspicion, I guess, about people in that business. I remember sitting in on a meeting with her, and I for whatever reason, I remember thinking, this guy is lying. This is not a truthful person. Yeah. And she was more gullible and more hopeful. And
you can be very much blinded, by your dream, and you start ignoring some pretty big signs.
And she had such a kind of, if you dream it, it will come kind of vision. And so I always believed for her that it would, that some magical, because she was incredibly stunning, like in a way that even as a teenager, men are whistling on the street at her. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm the teenager.
Yeah.
She had she carried herself in this incredibly elegant way. And she was just this very striking person. So that combined with her intelligence and her kind of vision for herself, I always thought, I thought her dreams will come true.
Right, because she has all the things.
She has everything
required of that. Did she do like Course in Miracles or any of those things?
No, she was much more, she's a funny combination of, she was very intellectual, but then I guess maybe had a sense, it was her interpretation of all the religion she'd grown up with, I think was just this, there was she didn't quite embrace what had been taught to her, but I think she did believe in something. Yeah. And it was a very painful on many levels realization when she passed away without any of those things coming true. And it was a real shock to me. And it served, I mean, I already was sort of starting to work before that, but I have never believed if you dream it, it will come.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? You hustle and work for everything you
We
get.
have that in common. Yeah, I hear a lot of actors in interviews saying that they just knew it would happen or whatever. And I'm virtually the opposite. I'm like, it won't happen, but I'm going to do all the steps required so I have no regrets.
Right.
But suffice to say, you had I think we had a kind of a similar, my dad left when I was 3. He didn't move to England, but he moved into a bar virtually. And then he died very young at 62. And I've had this whole full circle feeling about him. I can explain a lot of my isms based on him, yet I've come to love him. I give him too much blame than he deserves. Like it's all a messy mix. I love him, but it was definitely like my big relationship to fix and confront my whole life. Is that what your mother and yours was?
I mean,
did you take it personally when she left England? To me, that feels like...
I'm sure I did.
Yeah.
I'm sure I did. I don't remember that necessarily, but as a young adult, I felt really clear that I probably was not going to get an answer from her that would fix or change anything. And that what I wanted was for us to have as good a relationship as we possibly could. And that meant I had to readjust.
Right. So were you the adult in the relationship? That sounds like the adult kind of response to it, not the
Well,
kid
I did
response.
go through a time. I went through a couple of years when we really didn't speak. The couple of years in college, I just didn't see her and didn't really speak to her. In my family, people don't raise their voices really. And there was never a confrontation. There was never a fight. There was never there's never any of that. I just kind of took a few years, I feel like, to figure out where I was.
And you're super close to your dad, right?
I'm super close to my dad.
So some of my stuff was just, I'm so in love with my mother that however mad I was about my own personal stake in it, I really was mad at him for her. Like she was a single mother raising us and he wasn't participating in a way I thought he should, and financially or time wise. So I was just so mad that he could have treated this woman who's my number one that way. It wasn't until later where I started owning my own, like, well, yeah, now I'm mad about me,
Right. Well, my mom also was diagnosed with cancer pretty young, for the first time when she was around 50.
Breast cancer?
Mm-hmm. And she had my half-sister who's 15 years younger than I am. And that was like an instant bond. So my trips became less about anything except being friends with my sister, taking care of her when she was really little. And my mother's first diagnosed with cancer, my sister kind of turned to me and started getting, sent to spend a summer with me or, hang out, come visit me at work or something. And that also, I think, made the perspective shift. There was not going to be a whole bunch of time to work this out. And it just sort of adjusted everything.
How often were you going to see her?
Like once a year.
Once a year,
twice a year maybe. And also my dad was always really respectful of her. They always were friends. They really, you could see until the end. Occasionally, this didn't happen very often, but the three of us would go to dinner. They couldn't stop talking to one another. They had so much to say and so many common interests and books. They were talking, there was such electricity intellectually. So she just
did you ever think like, oh wow, had these people met at 30?
Yes, for sure.
They could have really been
for sure.
Yeah.
I just think they were overwhelmed. She could probably have found what she wanted to do with her life within that relationship, within being a mom. She didn't think so.
Yeah. I was 38 when I had Lincoln, and we have help and we have money. We don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. And it is still almost push you to the breaking point. I just can't imagine being 20. So again, having kids and looking back, it's like, well, what the fuck did I expect of my 24-year-old dad who now had 2 kids and a wife and all this stuff.
Right.
So
I also think and I don't know where this came from, but I just don't think it does anyone any good to live in the poor me, I just really don't believe in that. And I say that humbly because far worse circumstances have happened to people, but I always had a very independent, you're not
going to be defined by any of
right.
that. Yeah.
And
and I think that's the most pragmatic and healthy way to do it. At the same time, I do think as you become an adult and you find yourself in patterns, which I certainly found myself in patterns, both with relationships and all kinds of things. At that point, it's useful to go like, well, why?
Yes.
What is it I'm trying to heal myself of? It is relevant to find out the explanation.
Oh God, it's inescapable. You can't possibly. Oh no, I'm not saying I made a decision to be, neutral or happy about it, and,
Yeah.
and that it never affected anything. It affected everything.
I've said this a bunch on here. I don't know why, but I guess it's really key to recognize the difference between an explanation and an excuse. So I am interested in the explanation of how my childhood is, created all these patterns or habits. I'm not interested in it being an excuse
Right.
for why I behave this way. And I do think people think other people are making an excuse when sometimes they're not. They're just recognizing, oh, like me, I have a fucking man complex. I do anything I think that will make me a man. I'll ride wheelies on shit. I'll jump off a building. I'll fight a guy, whatever it is. Because ultimately, I'm just waiting for my dad to
Yeah.
show up and go like, "Goddamn, son,
Yeah.
you're a man.
Yeah, exactly.
You're a man's man." You
Yeah,
know, and I'm in
right.
search of that from other men, my peers,
Yes.
to give me that. But at a certain point, I have to go, okay, cool. You have that issue, but it's time to stop jumping off buildings.
I was never going to be some of the things she just naturally was. She had all this, I'm sure sounds so false coming from like an actor, but I don't understand clothes. Like I really
Right.
don't. I finally just had to be like, I'm not my mother. I don't have a great sense of it. She just had a sort of femininity that just not me.
Yeah.
And it's like your man stuff. I've tried to be like real put together, kind of elegant and effortlessly, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Even if I'm defining myself by what I'm not compared to her.
But isn't it interesting? So here's someone that sounds like it would have probably been maybe even a little easier for her to accomplish those goals. But if there's any quality you have that I've noticed over the years is that you finish it, you start.
Mm-hmm.
And that in itself is a quality that's worth more than anything, weirdly.
Mm-hmm.
Because had you looked like, let's say, her and were just effortlessly elegant and then had your quality to finish what you start, God knows what that is. But you went to school, you finished school, you went and you got a master's degree, you write books. That weirdly, right, is the most vital thing that you could have.
But it's sad too, in a way, because those are some goals she had, that she was never, she wrote. There's just so many, things she wanted to do that she didn't get to do. And so I'm sure that is a driving force, of some kind.
Living out her dreams in a weird way. Do you think in any way psychologically you knew your mother had a flair for this? Did you in any way think, oh, I'll start performing as a kid and that's something that she'll be interested in me for? Do you think at all your interest in acting and performing was started by this desire to be noticed by her?
I don't know. It didn't necessarily seem like a reality because I don't know that she ever saw me in anything. She wasn't around enough to have that fantasy. She
Right.
lived so far away. And
So maybe it's just a genetic bug. You were predisposed
Yes.
to want to do that.
well, and when she was growing up, the oldest of four sisters, there is a kind of celebrity to being the missionary kid in these areas where just by virtue of these four gorgeous girls, like they were celebrities. One of her sisters had a pop hit in the 80s. It was in the family. So I didn't equate that. What they did was so kind of glamorous. And like my Aunt Kitty, who was the singer, had like platinum blonde hair. And she, I was at her video shoot, but of course that gave me permission in a way to even imagine it being possible. But my biggest dream was like to be in the rep company of Arena Stage in Washington. And maybe because what I saw of success, I just did air quotes, success, looked so phony to me. So I thought, oh no, I won't do that. I'll be like a real actor,
Right. You were getting into it for what you deemed the right reason, not just for attention.
It
but
was
for
just
the
like
hour.
one of those things they say. I'd had no choice. It was just the thing I was completely drawn to. It was not result oriented in the beginning at all. And when I was growing up, I'm a little older than you. We didn't have those examples. There were no Kardashians. There were no.
Do you think I grew up with a Kardashian? I'm so flattered right now.
I just mean they're like my go-to example
Cable
of like
came out when
famous.
I was a kid.
Yeah,
there wasn't even cable most of my life.
I remember sitting in my college dorm when like MTV started. You know
Right,
what I
yeah.
mean? Like we didn't have models in the same way kids the kids today have.
Yeah, there was no reality shows.
No.
There was no YouTube. Right.
No.
Yeah. And there was 3 channels on TV.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
odds of you getting on one
I
of
wanted
those
to be
is-
like Fonzie, that was, there was not like another actress I was trying to be,
To imagine Fonzie nowadays would have a clothing line is pretty mind-boggling.
Exactly
or
right.
he would have a cologne, Fonzie cologne.
He'd have a leather jacket, a line of leather jackets, a line of motorcycles.
So you went to school. You did really well in school. Your dad is very bright, and you're, from my experience, very bright. And was college fun for you?
Well, no. I went to acting school my first year and
At NYU.
at NYU.
Uh-huh.
It's very creepy, the facts that you know.
Uh-huh.
That
And I didn't
from
know,
your
by the way, I
research.
didn't know any of them 24 hours ago, even though we've been friends for a decade. But yeah. Jimmy Kimmel murdered 3 people. I had no idea.
Well, you could see that
until I
coming.
interviewed
Yeah.
him that he, was acquitted from a triple homicide. But you went to NYU.
I went to acting school. My boyfriend at the time was at Harvard. I would go visit him, and the contrast
Can I ask
was
you
ridiculous.
before you get
Yes.
there? Were you boy crazy as a girl? Did you
no.
love guys?
I know.
You
I
didn't?
had this one boyfriend off and on through most of high school and a little bit into college.
And were you attracted to your dad or your boyfriend's dad types?
Well, yeah, a little. I mean, in that, like, this old boyfriend I'm talking about and Peter met one time in San Francisco. I was having lunch with Charlie, my old boyfriend, and they like walked up to one another, and I remember, I think Peter said this. He goes, "Well, she likes tall white guys with backpacks."
And did he have hiking shoes on?
Yes, and they're
Oh
both.
my God.
And by white, he just means pale. They're both very pale.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not uniquely, but they're both really brainy.
Uh-huh.
Charlie was the our senior class president, and a very creative and interesting guy, but he was my friend for a long time. I was the bridge person between the cool girls and the geeky guys. Were it not for me, they would never have met.
Commingled.
And I was only on the outside of cool girls. Like I was sort of just like, they let me come along. I was not one of the popular people,
Right.
but I had a couple friends in the group of girls who were like fun. And then all my guy friends are like from high school are crazy successful and were slightly less popular with the girls at the time, although
Right.
those guys
Now
always
they're-
do
they get the last
fantastically
laugh,
well.
don't
They really do.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say necessarily boy crazy, but I definitely had this on again, off again relationship with him for a while. And then I'd go visit him in school, and what he was doing seemed like school to me. And what
Right.
I was doing seemed abstract. It was
The stuff you were studying at NYU.
because I was 17 when I went to college because I had skipped a grade. And
Right.
so I was very young, and I had never been in a conservatory type training program. And, you literally just like do crazy.
Oh yeah,
you-
Kristen went to
Yes.
NYU, and the stuff she tells me about, it's mind blowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going.
Alexander technique,
Sure.
like breathing in people's mouths
You're-
and weird
you're
stuff.
doing
I'm
all
like,
kinds
this is
of
a
stuff.
fucking class. I had to write like really long papers.
Yeah. Well, for some reason, I craved that. I thought, I don't know if the 4 years of this is I just didn't make sense. So
Yeah.
then I transferred to Barnard, and none of my credits transferred. But the thesis of all of this, I want to say, is I was driven by some ticking clock that actually does not exist.
Uh-huh.
But I was sure that if I didn't do everything as quickly as I possibly could, that I was going to fail. And there's whatever that anxiety, it's a combination of anxiety and ambition, because it's not just pure ambition. There's something in there that's like whacked. It's
Fear-based.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because I was in a panic all the time, and I thought I needed to finish school on time. And
Right.
I wrote about this a little bit in my book, that, I had this really made up a finish line. And so
and
I
the stakes,
crammed,
right? Like
yes.
it was so easy to fail in life.
Also,
yeah?
the idea that 1 year older and it'd all be
Yeah,
behind
yeah,
you,
the train
never
would
make
have left.
26. What? No, you got to do it by 25, which
Yeah.
is just not true.
I had a similar, I don't know where it came from,
Yeah.
but like you end up finding people, right? That, like I walked around knowing S.E. Hinton was 14 when she wrote Outsiders, or however old she was, crazy young. And that's something now when I'm 18, I feel like I'm 4 years behind this arbitrary thing I learned.
Well, I had a friend in high school who was also interested in theater, who some imagined competition I had with him.
Right.
I was like, well, he did summer stock. I should have done summer stock. He got a commercial, a local commercial. I should have had something, like, as if we're at all the same. And he's a guy anyway. But so
they're talking about rebooting Gilmore Girls with him as the lead. So,
damn it.
Yeah,
I think gets me again. But so I wanted to cram these 4 years of school basically into 3 years, which I did, but I didn't do well. And it's hilarious.
And it's not fun, right?
No, it wasn't fun at all. And now they just invited
me back there. Did you party or sleep with people, or did you do any of that? Or
I was with Charlie for like most of my freshman year. I had a couple like really ill-fated dates, I guess. It was a rough time in the 80s in New York City. Like, plus at Barnard, they had just started taking women at Columbia College.
Oh,
so
really?
the ratios were really off.
They were in your favor, though.
No. They had, so there are 3 colleges. There's Barnard, Columbia, and the School of Engineering. There were far more women. So Barnard is an entire college of women. So there were, the men had their pick, basically.
Oh, wow. Okay. This is like the 2 straight guys in Kristen's musical theater program.
I can't believe she had 2.
They were like too tired to have sex anymore.
Right.
They just couldn't keep up with the demand.
I've always, for whatever reason, I was a tomboy. I was raised by my dad. I end up in these really girly situations. I rode horses as a kid. That was my big sport. There's like one guy in my whole horseback riding camp. And then even Gilmore Girls was always such a funny, thing to be kind of my big thing, because it is, I always appreciate the men who, say that they have enjoyed it, but it was
a female world.
It was a female world, and that's who
because the creator is female.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a mother-daughter story.
And you're the boss. You're the fucking boss on Gilmore Girls. It's a matriarchy.
It is. Yeah. And there's, perhaps some poetry. I mean, I would get asked year after year after year, was this your relationship with your mom? And, what kind of mom? And I'm neither a mom nor had this relationship with my mom. Right. Yeah. And yet I got to have that in fiction, and I just always thought that was interesting. And then I ended up in this, women's college, which I couldn't be more thankful for the experience, but most of my friends were guys and growing up, like it just was unlikely. So yeah, I dated a couple of dudes, but it wasn't anything that you would write a steamy. No. And then I was in an a cappella group, also not necessarily a guy magnet.
Yeah. Well, I've never gone to see a female a cappella group.
We were kind of cool, though. We were,
no. Hold on. Are we sure about that?
Of the female a cappella groups, we were considered to be a little edgy.
Okay.
We threw out condoms at our concerts.
Oh,
Dax.
I guess
what's not cool about that?
That's super cool.
And would
you put one on a banana or anything?
No, we did. I feel like we made macaroni necklaces. Like, it was just kind of kitschy. That was a great time. And
were you doing that purely for fun, or was that also somehow career driven or this time clock motivated? Was that something?
It was actually more my attempt to be social, because I felt really isolated as a transfer student. I didn't know anyone. I went to see this group and they were really cool, and I thought it was a collegiate kind and thing to do. We didn't really have sororities
Harvard's
or anything.
Got the whooping coughs or something. Whipping poofs. Whipping poofs.
And that was an aspect of it too, which is you'd travel to other schools to perform in school. You'd host schools. And I think after acting school, I wanted to be sitting on a quad playing hacky sack. Like, I just wanted some, poetic
frisbee
version
in the quad.
of college. And in the middle of Manhattan, there's only so much you can get.
What was your relief from this, for lack of a better word, type A-ism? Where were you finding solace?
At the time, I don't really think there was any.
Because mine was drinking. Like, I had the same kind of drive that you do, and this nonstop voice telling me I'm failing, you've missed the boat.
Right.
And drinking was a great relief of that madness.
I did not have that. I filled up all my time. I think that was one of the things I did. So that there was no time to consider if this was a way to live.
A pleasurable way.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Because I struggled to pay for school. I worked in the library. I was a waitress. Once I got out of school, I was a tutor. I worked at Barney's. I was a cocktail waitress at the Improv. I ushered theater, movie theater. Like I was on a hustle that like had no end. And then in the summer, I'd go work at this summer stock where
You went in Michigan, I learned.
I went to
How on earth did you
Augusta,
never
Michigan.
bring that up?
I don't know because it
You
was
must
such.
not listen to me when I tell you
I
like
listen
where
to you.
I'm from.
I listen to you, but this was a small town.
Because
This
if
was
I
like
had
not
the
where you're
pleasure of doing theater in Virginia, I would have told you about it all the time.
This was, those auditions.
Summers in Michigan's a fun place.
It's 1,000 degrees, and not if you're painting the fence, which is what we did every summer.
Like Mr. Miyagi was your coach.
It's such a smart business model because you're paying for the privilege to clean the bathrooms.
Oh my God.
It's summer stock, right? So, and it's
Yeah.
non-union. So you do these big auditions in New York called the Straw Hats.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you got a summer job. But a lot of these you started as an apprentice, and the carrot on the end of the stick was if you worked there enough summers, you'd get your equity card, the
okay.
theater union.
Uh-huh.
So you were building up, whatever it's credits or points or however they do it.
And also performing.
You would perform in the chorus and once in a while you'd get a part.
Uh-huh.
But
Again,
during
this isn't like filled with hanky panky. These are people all
That
living.
kind of was.
Okay,
That was.
Thank God. I just need that part of your story where there was a ton of hanky panky.
yes,
creep up on
I was
us at
starting
some
to do a little better by then.
Okay.
And
as you say, those are warm summer nights in
sure.
Michigan. Yeah.
And there's not a lot
There's
to do.
swimming.
We would go.
Did you go swimming?
No, it was like a landlocked. I know we'd go to Target. That's what we do for fun.
Okay.
Where Target was like new at the time, and you were like, "What? You can get a tomato and a speaker? Like, what is this great new place?"
Yeah.
And that was literally what we'd do is walk the aisles of Target. Also, you had no time off because you'd work as
What year was this? This was 93? 92?
Well, yeah.
I mean, we could have goddamn bumped into one another. I was still there.
But were you in
There would
Augusta?
have been some hanky panky.
Yeah,
I don't care
for
what
sure.
your program was back then.
This.
Once I would have heard you were from Virginia,
Oh my god.
prepare to be wooed.
Oh my god.
Can you see DC from your property?
I don't think it stopped almost literally until, there was a little bit of a nice respite where I started working a little bit as an actor. I finally started making some commercials and had some money for the first time.
Yeah, you booked commercials, which drove me
Yeah.
nuts when I read about you.
Why?
Because I auditioned for commercials for 8 years, and in 8 years I booked 2. One of them was an industrial buyout.
Really?
I just could not get one
I
of those.
can't
I must have
believe
driven to
that. Yet you are a
1,000
commercial
auditions.
king
I don't
today.
know. Maybe
Yeah.
today. Back then, I felt like I was not good looking enough for like the deodorant commercial,
Mm-hmm.
and nor was I character-y looking enough to be the guy who falls down leaving the bathroom. I just felt like I was in this, and maybe it was all in my head.
Yeah.
Maybe I just sucked. I have no clue. But suffice to say, I definitely did not book any of those. And I went on thousands. This memory I get when I closed the door of my Honda Civic and I finally say,
I had a Honda Civic.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, they're the best. When people ask me advice for an aspiring actor,
Yeah.
I say buy a Honda Civic. 'Cause
Wow.
You're not going to make any money and you don't want this thing to break.
Yeah.
That's going to get you everywhere.
Yeah.
That's like my number one piece of advice.
That's fantastic.
But I would shut the door of my Honda Civic and I would go, Chili's, it's always Friday in here. Fuck. That's how I was supposed to say it.
But
and that was my
Dax-
life, is saying it's always Friday in here when I'd get in my
Dax,
car.
this is in my book too, that I say the hardest line ever written by any great writer is "Welcome to Chili's."
Yeah.
Because
you have that exact line.
I have that
Yeah.
exact line.
Yeah.
Because it's and for whatever
It
reason,
should be the entrance line for like Juilliard.
I've gone back to my grad program at SMU and have them. That's my opener when I do like a workshop.
Yeah.
Because it's that sweet spot of authentic but salesperson. It's so many things you're trying to be all at once.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
In so many of those auditions, I'd say like 10% of the auditions I went on, you were required to dance to know music.
Oh,
because you had lines, so you'd just be in this room dancing, and then I would get
Why'd you have to dance?
Because it was going to be a fun commercial with dancing, you know? You're either on a dance floor, or you found out you got a raise and you got to do a happy dance. again, I just know I would shut the door to my Honda and then I would remember the perfect dance I
Yes,
should have done.
right.
And it was just so embarrassing. I mean, it's
Yes,
just,
it's so embarrassing.
humiliating. It's
Totally
incredible.
is. And also I think it's really good training. I mean, and no one was more shocked than I when I started booking these. And in fact, I'd gone years without like no reason that I should believe this was going to work out except I started getting some commercials, but there were
and
people,
you make a good enough living on
That's right.
those that you no longer have to have 7 jobs.
well, I
around
made
the
a
city.
rule, which was I would continue because I had a waitressing job still, and that I was going to keep that job, even though I was starting to put a little money in the bank. And I technically, maybe for a few months didn't have to be working every day until something came up that forced me to quit my day job. And
which is funny enough, I think the opposite of like The Secret and all these self-help books, which is
really?
you got to close that door before you can,
Right.
Yeah. But you did the opposite and it still worked. So put that in your pipe and suck on it.
It's probably part of that anxiety thing,
Well, I think
sense of
Monica has this.
honesty.
I have this, and I think you have this, which is you have this fear also that if you tip into a certain lack of humility, you'll get nothing up from the world
Right.
as well, right?
Right.
So
Yes.
like Monica Monica, by the way, books every fucking commercial audition she goes
Good
on.
for you, Monica.
It's I'm so happy for her, and I'm so jealous
Yeah.
of it. It's crazy. It's like it's a legit percentage. And then there'll be one where it's in Santa Monica at 5 p.m.
Yeah.
It's something she knows she's not going to get. And she tells herself, if I don't drive there, I'll never book one again.
Right.
Of course, this is hooey, but you do it, right?
Yeah, there's some bargaining happening
Yes.
with the universe a little bit when you.
Yeah.
But when you're a freelancer of any kind, you have to do that. You have to make up your own structure and your own code of conduct, because who else is going to do it for you? And you might as well listen to the people who hung on to reality longer than the ones who are like, believe in yourself,
Right.
and that's
Yeah.
probably in reaction to some of my mom's stuff too. But there was a friend of mine has her son
Michelle
is out
Obama.
here. Ugh, if she won't stop calling me. No, a friend of mine has a son who just came out here to try to be an actor, and send me a text after a couple months, like, how long, how do I know kind of
Yeah,
thing?
yeah.
Like, when is it going to happen? And I was like, dude, you got years ahead. Like,
Yeah.
it can be years, and so you kind of have to be your own boss.
Do you want to steal my sentence I give to family members?
Yes, what is it?
And I do believe in this because it was my mantra, which is, look, if this is something that he'd be happier failing at than he would be succeeding at something else, then this is the job for him. And I would think that occasionally when I was like, I was in the Sunday show at the Groundlings, and I at least had that, right? And I did, and I remember during that period, I was still flat broke and everything, but I was like, I am happier doing this than I would be making a ton of money at some other business,
And I had a class too. Once I got out of grad school, I studied with this teacher, Wynn Hanman, who is still with us, and they're making a documentary about him. And I just got to go and talk about him for a long time. And they handed me the contact sheet from my class, and Connie Britton, that's where I met Connie, is there. Asif Manvi was on the sheet. And not only was that the creative outlet that kept me going, but this became a little bit of my community. When you're starting out, you look to the left and the right, and hopefully you'll have some friends who
get some success.
Yeah.
And in my circle, my life, that was Melissa McCarthy. So we were all in comedy troupe together, and then she was the first among us that was like bought a house.
Right.
And it was from being Sookie, right?
Yeah.
Gilmore Girls.
Yeah.
And that was mind blowing to us.
Yes.
I mean, it was all we talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was
I
shocking.
remember
She
in
still
college-
she was still friends with us, because I'm sure that's all we thought about, is the fact that she was, making a paycheck and doing this thing.
I went with her to look at that first house
Over
before
by
she-
Gelson's,
yeah,
right?
before she redid it, which she's incredible at.
Yeah.
I remember in college there was a guy who was in another a cappella group who had a Burger King commercial. You'd point him out, like people would be like,
Oh,
"Wait,
yeah.
that's the guy.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
the guy who has the thing." Like, it's so far away when you're not even close, and
Yeah.
and then even once you get in it, I could see as far as I could maybe get a couple lines on a soap. And then I got a couple lines on a soap. And then I was like, maybe I could be like a guest star on a sitcom. And then I got that. And then you keep having to.
Yeah, the
You
bar
keep-
keeps on.
yes.
going
Yes.
further and further.
Well, it
Which-
does if you're smart.
Well, though, I did want to talk to you about that, because I think that's something that we both have, right? And that is human nature. So it's like, God, if I could just make a living doing commercials or whatever. You tell yourself that for a while, then you do that and you go, man, if I was just a regular on a sitcom, that would be it. But that never stops.
Right.
You eventually, if you want to know peace, you kind of got to stop that.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you can also miss out. My analogy is always like, I've worked with a lot of different actors that were in a movie, we're on a location somewhere exotic, we're making good money.
Yeah.
And they're preoccupied that they're not so-and-so.
Right.
And I always say, it'd be a real fucking shame to miss the experience of having been in the NBA. Just because you're not Michael Jordan,
Right.
it's really simple to go, fuck, I'm not Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Well, you might be Scottie Pippen. That's a goddamn amazing life. And it's very easy to miss it because you do keep moving the mark, right?
Well, what I mean in moving the bar is it's fun to give yourself something to aspire to, but for me, the bar does change. And at a certain point, my bar became more about feeling really happy at home, having love in my life and feeling really grateful for that. And pivoting, for me, it's been helpful to read the landscape and go, well, that's not going to happen, or this is going to happen.
Yeah, you're not going to be a superhero in a movie.
Right.
I'm not either. That ship sailed.
That's right. That's right. And I'm not going to be Sandra Bullock because she already did it.
Yep.
And it's not going to suddenly, but so, and I've always been pretty realistic about that. I don't know what the next thing is as an actor. Like I am at my first place where there are more options that are not appealing than ones that are, which is why one of the reasons I started writing, and I also started writing just out of the same way I started acting. It just happened. And I thought, okay, well, if this is bubbling up, I better give it some attention and a deadline and some structure. I have more writing assignments right now than I do.
But what's
acting
interesting
jobs.
is you started this prior to being in that mental state, because you started your first book while we were doing Parenthood.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Were you that farsighted that
No. This is what that was. I was on a job that was really fun. Parenthood.
Yeah. And if you had to say one person made it the most fun, I mean, whatever, you don't have to say my name, but just, if one person pops
the
up.
person I wish I had more scenes with the most was you, because we always had such a great time.
We had such a fucking blast. And I do feel like we had the least amount of scenes of any two characters in the show, weirdly.
Yeah.
And I remember when you joined, because for people who don't know this, the pilot was shot with Maura Tierney.
Say Vietnamese one more time.
You know Maura Tierney. She's a Vietnamese actor from Vietnam. But then she got sick momentarily, and then she was recast, and you joined the casting. I remember thinking, I think I'd only met you. I maybe met you twice socially, and you were very funny in real life. And I thought you and I will probably have a lot of scenes together, and we'll be funny together. But they pretty much put up a firewall between us.
They really did.
In fact, if there's one scene that immediately pops out in my head of our first scene working together. Do you have one? Because I have a specific.
It was
one.
on the boat.
Yes, I was fixing the sink. Right.
Yeah.
That's immediately where my head goes when I think of acting with
Yeah.
you. Is we had some scene. It was almost impossible to shoot because my head's under a fucking sink. It was like poorly conceived, right? I'm not
Well,
in
I
the
remember
scene.
I'm like sitting on the counter or something, and yeah.
And you're basically having a scene with the neighbor and Tim the tool man, whose
Yeah.
face you never see, right? It's just eyes. Like you were having a scene with my
Right.
feet.
Right.
And
but
then-
I remember it being really fun though. But
Yeah, because we hijacked it mostly,
Yeah,
I think,
yeah,
right? It was
yeah.
conceived one way and then we
Sure.
did something else and it was really fun.
I think maybe that's why they didn't put us in more scenes together. They were like,
Right.
well, if neither of them is going to say anything we wrote, why don't we spread them out a little bit?
Yeah, independently it works, but together it's the...
I think I was just so like, Gilmore Girls was every word as written. And there's a beauty to that. And there's a real discipline. And, in a funny way, after Parenthood, I was like, I really crave the sort of theatrical language, of Gilmore Girls. And then I got to do it again. But I was definitely like, they allowed some freedom, and I really took that freedom.
Yeah. They gave you an inch and you
held
took a
back
mile.
for a long time. Exactly. Yeah.
Me too. But yeah, so you were on Gilmore Girls, and that was your first really big break.
Yeah.
And that was a very hard show in that, as you just said, the language was really, really important.
Yeah.
And also you were the lead of the show, so your hours were crazy. Now shows are generally shot with 3 cameras.
Yeah.
there's not nearly as much time.
And digital. When we started Gilmore Girls, we shot on film, which takes a lot longer to light.
Yep, to load. You don't want to waste it, so you're not just going to leave the camera running and let people take 4 runs at it. Because on Parenthood, we'd have 3 cameras shooting, and you would often do 4 takes within 1 take. You just reset yourself and keep going, and there was no expense to that.
Right.
And that made our life super easy.
Right.
But yeah, you left a show where you were working, 14 hours a day?
14 hours a day. And then I did a Broadway musical. And then I did the Windshield Wiper movie. And then I did a couple of, I didn't stop.
Is there any point, though, between Gilmore Girls and Parenthood where you thought, I can only assume if you're like me, by the end of Gilmore Girls, you're like, I can't do this anymore. It's so much work, so long. I want something else. And then the second that's gone, you're like, oh boy. Was that my thing? Was that the one thing? Did you have those fears?
I just kind of kept barreling forward, and I'm sure I had all those fears because I have every fear of every kind every day, because that becomes its own addiction in a way, right? It's like, gotta work hard, gotta be in this, real battle mode. And that's how, look, it worked for this many years. So that's what I gotta stay in this mode and, kind of barrel through. And like the Broadway is an extremely demanding, insane schedule, and and is a musical.
You
and
did 113 shows.
Did we?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's too many.
It wasn't a hit show. You don't have the energy behind it. So that's even its own battle of like, I'm going to get in there and I'm going to give it my best, but and you don't know when it's going to end, because it's a business model I didn't understand. So I was like, how long do we keep this going before it's,
you're dying
doesn't
of
make
a
sense.
paper cut, basically. Yeah.
And I remember I ran into, name drop alert, but I had done an episode of Seinfeld when I was starting, and
I've never heard of that. That's a PBS program or something.
I ran into Jerry Seinfeld, who's always so nice, and he had so many episodes. He has no reason to remember. He's always like Speed Dial, which was my episode. But I said, I'm just so exhausted, and I can't figure it out. And he said, it's the audience. It's that energy of that relationship is the most wonderful energy. And on your worst night, you're giving so much and absorbing that, whatever the connection is. And
it's the fuel.
Yes. And sometimes you're really not working on much fuel. But so I had only existed there. And then I got Parenthood. And in the beginning, I was frustrated by what
little you had to do.
Yeah.
I recall this. I think that's a huge transition, by the way, for having to be the title character in a show and then come be a part of an ensemble is an adjustment.
There were so many things I didn't expect about it, but I think the most scary one at first was I had time. And I had no experience almost since I was in high school or before then. I mean, I jammed my summers full of jobs and camps and training, but it was all in the name of career. It wasn't like good times. I didn't like backpack through Europe or anything. Like I had been driving this train for so long.
Locomotive.
Yeah.
Did you have a person you were trying to be? Was there a career path that you were like, that's who I want to be? You brought up Sandra Bullock.
I mean, honestly, that was the dream. In the very beginning, I was up for a couple of things that, I auditioned for while you were sleeping. I don't think I came.
Did you get it?
Close. I got it. Okay. I was so good. But, I wanted to be Helen Hunt or Elizabeth McGovern. I really wanted to do a half hour and do kind of romantic comedies. I love romantic comedies of the, good kind. So anyway, and so some of that frustration, I think I just honestly didn't know what to do with myself. I got to this one day and Peter had moved in and I was really happy. And
you started hanky-pankying your co-star.
My brother, who I'd known for a million years.
You guys had been on a date, which I love. One of you didn't know he was on a date? Is that what it was? He wanted to play board games. Is that part of this date?
Okay, so that's not even the one I thought you were asking about. We had a couple near misses over like a 15-year period,
right? And
we were in the same episode of Caroline in the City. And so we became friends, and for various reasons over the years, I was always like, for one reason or another, I was like, oh, he's not interested, or he's not ready, or he's not dating material, he's not whatever. He invited me over to his apartment to play a board game.
Sure. Super sexy move.
And we did. And I was like,
and you
what?
legitimately played a
Which,
board
by
game.
the way, now
How
knowing
confusing.
he's from such a like cards and game family.
Yes, he's also from Minnesota.
Yeah.
You cannot underestimate the power of that right there. I
of
was
the
just there for the
subtlety
Super
of
Bowl
the
and I go,
Midwest.
oh, I understand
Yes.
Peter Krause now
Yeah.
perfectly.
Yeah.
Everyone is kind as hell.
Yes.
Genuine.
Really smart.
Earnest.
Yeah.
They're all, yeah.
Yeah. And
That's
kind of
him.
know, and I mean this in the, he's the sexiest man alive, but
He is.
kind of
He's
no
very sexy.
game in a traditional way because
Sure.
he didn't need one. But so anyway, we played board games, and then this is
By the way,
romantic.
if I'm a woman and a man invites me to play board games on what I perceive as a date, I'm 40% certain he's a serial killer. It's such an offbeat suggestion, you know?
But I genuinely thought, I didn't think we were going to go like make out or something, but I just thought I thought it was like a joke, like come up and see my etchings, you
Right,
know?
and
Like
then you get up there and he's in a robe or
he's like,
something.
so rummy cube or,
But God
fruit?
bless him. He
God
genuinely
bless
wanted to
him.
play some of those board games.
And then he threw, as we were leaving, he threw a football.
Classic
The
hit
one
on
and only,
move.
the one and only time I've ever, as he'll tell it, I caught a perfect spiral,
That-
which like,
That tells me everything about the
so,
day.
but wait, I caught the ball and he said, I think I'm in love. And I said, "Ugh, let's go. Because I had already been like, I was like, he's not flirting with me. So now when he did overtly flirt with me, I was just like, no, it was friend zone. So anyway,
But so many of our conversations on parenthood would be discussing our life shooting this show.
Yeah.
And I remember regular going like, just this experience is not going to be topped as far as
Right.
the workload and the people we got to be around
Right.
daily and who we're shooting shit with at craft service. That was a 10.
but I was still in
You were still in like
another mode.
Yeah.
But by the way, by the end, I became the person who would say to May and Miles, "You'll never have this again.
Yeah,
Don't you
slow down,
underestimate that."
smell these
And then,
roses.
so
Yeah.
I had
Parenthood
a
is
window that
is a
opened.
place where ambition goes to die.
Happily,
Yeah,
I had
yeah.
to make that transition.
That's my question to you is how do you I have this thing where I constantly am saying to myself, so you had all these characteristics as a person that brought you to the dance. But you're here and it's not necessarily that those characteristics are going to keep you at the dance. It's really
Right.
hard when a certain personality style has yielded results,
Right.
but that doesn't mean that it's going to yield happiness. It doesn't mean it's going to yield a relationship that lasts. It
That's
doesn't.
right.
So sometimes you gotta kind of
I
pivot,
think you
right?
constantly have to pivot.
Yeah.
I think it is part of growing and growing up, which I think we're always doing, is to lose the ideas you had about yourself, even if exactly what you're saying, even if they have been successful. Sometimes we're hanging on to something that does not serve us anymore. I don't know how you identify that necessarily, but I think it always bears another look, because I did get to a place when I would say like, God, I wish I had more to do on the show, or I feel ambitious and like, it's like I'm sitting on the bench and I want to play in the game, kind of thing.
for sure.
But once I kind of had that given to me, even though I didn't think I wanted it,
You were forced to.
I was forced to slow down and be quiet. And the first pages that I wrote that became my first book happened in a moment in our trailer when I was done with work. It was noon. I knew who I was going home to. There was no kind of, and I thought, what is this space? What a waste, kind of, that was my first thought. And then I was reflecting on it was I've been in therapy. Like it's not the first time I reflected on my life ever, but it was a different kind of space.
Yeah.
And out of that space came new creative thoughts and a new pursuit. It wasn't born out of like, well, now I guess I should try to brand myself as a writer. It wasn't anything mercenary. It wasn't about career. I just had kind of thoughts, and I started telling a story.
And in this period of like, I guess, reflection, are you also evaluating your life outside of your identity as an actor?
It affected everything. My mantra, which had been like, go, 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 became like, slow down, slow down. And also I thought maybe there is a way to, and I'm talking about everything, not just career, can I have more ease in how I'm conducting myself and in the level of anxiety I'm experiencing all the time?
Yeah.
Can I enjoy myself? Can I be here? And it has to do with being in a place that was a happy place, but it's not entirely that. It was just having some space to feel who I was and where I was. And it was one of those life moments where it's like, hey, is this still serving me? Is this kind of like manic, got to get to the next place? And it's probably aged somewhat, but it's also, there's a kind of self-care that maybe loops back to how we were or were not parented. My father is an incredible person. He was a great parent, but he was not a mommy in a traditional mommy way. And like, I would go to other kids' houses and their moms were like, I would just feel like, ew, they're so like present. And they're like, they're so like kissy and like,
Gross.
wondering what we're doing. And like, I was like, just leave us alone. We're fine.
Yeah.
And so, that fit for who I was. But I think it took me a long time to be like, maybe I can just, mommy this up a little bit more and just kind of have more ease.
And you're using therapy mostly at this moment to help guide you through this?
I've been in therapy since college. That has been enormously helpful.
Well, I've never done this exercise, but I'm aware of the exercise where therapists will ask you to basically comfort the young version of yourself, right? Like imagine the young. When I got
asked to do this once, and I was like, see, okay, I can't do that because all I'm going to do is kind of like judge my acting while I'm just going to be like, oh, wait, I want to go back and rewrite this monologue. I can't. It's too like performy.
Well, I one time before I had embraced a 12-step program, I'm like, I printed out a picture of myself as a baby and laminated it and put it in my wallet. When I wanted to do cocaine, I would pull out this picture of myself and think, would you put cocaine in that little baby's
Dax.
nose?
And then you did
It didn't
anyway.
work. In fact, I'd put lots of cocaine in that baby.
That's like a very beautiful.
I tried it for a while.
Detail.
And then Belle discovered this, and then she started keeping it in her wallet just because she wanted to see that baby often. When she was hating me, she'd look at that baby and go, oh, he was once an innocent person that did all this. Yeah.
But I think in general, I just kind of thought, I feel like things can be easier and more enjoyable, and it's not cheating. I think I had tied up effort and worry with I'm doing a good job, and then if I enjoy myself and if something's easy, I probably didn't put enough effort into it.
Yes.
And I was like trying to separate, those two. Also, part of being an actor, there's only one other job, like being an athlete, where you're thinking about how you look all the time. You're thinking about what you're eating. You're thinking about like your hair, like you're thinking about. So in terms of being all consuming, it's not even just the hours you're putting in on a stage. It's like you're constantly thinking about yourself. You're constantly being reminded where you stand. It's the invitation you get. It's the table you might get. Are they sending a car or not? It's all the trappings. And these things are meaningless, but they can contribute to our sense of ourselves and our achievement. And that's, everybody probably has that at work in some way or another, but it's perhaps more transparent, like our thing is just like the calls stop or the things go away or they come back or they, you're just, it's a murky.
There's a ton of uncertainty.
That's right.
But the thing I really hope to convey is for certain, if you told me when I was 17 that I would be on an NBC television show and people at the mall would recognize me, I at the 17-year-old would have said, well, then I must feel great. Like I'll feel celebrated and loved. And I would have never thought, wow, I'll be on that TV show and I'll probably be thinking about why I'm not in American Sniper.
Right.
But in fact, that's what I'm thinking when I get there. So I feel like it's my duty to just break the fallacy that like, you'll never feel like you've got that level of whatever you're going for, that you actually end up having to make that decision for yourself.
That's right.
And
this is a natural segue to plug the book I have coming out.
Okay, great.
You remind me of it because I gave a graduation speech last year, and then the publisher asked me to do kind of a graduation book, like a advice. I totally changed the speech I gave, but
elongated advice.
That's
basically,
right. Yeah. And really, what it comes down to, and it can feel so tricky to say this in a way that doesn't sound. It's like it's a very lucky place to get to do what you want. But the real secret is getting to do that does not change your sense of yourself. Because we all have friends, who think if they had X, Y, Z, or, that success kind of gives you something, and it really doesn't. In fact, it can separate you from your sense of yourself, because now on top of everything, you don't feel the way you thought you were going to feel, and, and the way you're supposed to feel, and the way everybody thinks you should feel. And how dare you complain from your
fancy
height,
house?
But it forces you to look within. So many of us, started these storytelling artistic careers to fantasize about being somebody else. I mean, that's at its core. The day of work feeds you. The experience, and it's what you're saying about being on a set with somebody who's like, but why aren't I, but it is literally just the day. And I've had happy days as, a cocktail waitress, and I've had sad days as an actor. I've felt better about, some of my work as a tutor than I have, you know what I mean? It's literally the day.
I have almost zero memories of where episodes we did. How present or not present I am in those storylines. I don't really know. I can't tell you if year 3 was big for me or year 5. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I have, all my memories are us making that show.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
In AA, we say we're not in the results business. We're in the show up and do work business.
Yes.
And I have to remind myself of that constantly. 'Cause
Everybody
the experience
does.
on planet Earth is the work part. It's not the results part.
And it's a game, or it's a lie. There are many reasons to continue to try to sell the idea that this car, this house, this show, this job, this sweater, this thing will then put you in the place you want to be. And once you get that, can be jarring, because you're really left with who you are, who you love, and your effort. I think your intention. My intention is now I'm really invested in putting positivity into my work, into the world. And that's very flowery and also very simple.
Well, I like that, because I like to ask people what gives you self-esteem, because that is at the core of all of this.
Yeah.
What is your list of things that make you generally content or like yourself?
One is continuing to learn something new. I got a shot as a writer, and I wanted to learn more and do better and continue to grow. So some of those opportunities have come to me, and some I have created. It's one of the things I'm proud of in terms of Gilmore Girls or Parenthood, really, is lifting up young people.
Well, females, hopefully, in particular. 'Cause
Females
they
in
have
particular.
a very hard.
Yeah, and
I have all these fucking issues as a 6'2" white guy. With blonde. It's like it's so unfair. I have the most advantage anyone could possibly have in this country, and to think I still don't like myself.
Well, I think everybody struggles. I really do. I don't know that many people who don't doubt themselves. I don't know that many people who are completely satisfied. I don't think it's the human condition. I don't think it has to do with. And again, we're living in a world where whether it's Instagram or there's so many ways to feel bad about yourself. There's many ways to put a life out there that isn't real.
It's curated.
Yes. I think I'm coming back around to kind of a mom issue in a way, and really looking into that a little bit more. But in terms of what and kind of, so to answer your question, one is positivity and the other is kind of giving something away. I think at best, there is a purpose to, this that is not about us, and that I would bet was as important a piece of becoming an actor as anything, which is a real desire to tell a healing story for ourselves, but for people. First of all, the world feels crazy right now. And I think it is linked somewhat to the number of, this is where I'm gonna sound like 200 years old, but to the number of shows and movies that are really, really harsh and violent and dark. I don't know what came first.
Right, the anti-hero movement.
So much dystopia. It's too much. And when I go to look for something to watch, with Peter or with his son, or the choices are one more harrowing than the next. And I don't think that's helping us. Meanwhile, we sat as a family and watched every episode of Queer Eye, and it's the most hopeful.
You love it.
Kind.
Yeah, you're always pitching that to me. I think almost every time I run into you, you'll bring
That's
Queer
not true.
Eye.
We just watched it this weekend. What are you talking about?
It's new on
It just
Netflix.
came out.
Oh.
The new one.
Oh, okay. What do you like, Project Runway?
Yes, that's different.
Oh, okay. You can see where I'm a little confused.
I like stuff where people
Where
make,
gay
make
men
things.
give advice?
No, yes.
Okay.
But I'm telling you, one of the reasons we all loved it is it's happy, it's hopeful, it's what you want in life instead of continually reaffirming,
Do you think it's possible, though? There is a way to read all that as being positive ultimately, which is if life is pretty darn good across the country, then what is lacking in your life and what you want to see is kind of this weird, gnarly underbelly, bad anti-hero stuff, that it's actually the thing that's missing. Whereas I now see that there is a trend where there's more happy stuff coming out, which I think is almost a comment on the fact that people generally are feeling pessimistic about life in America. And now we're looking for more wish fulfillment in the other direction. I mean, I don't know. That's my positive spin on it. But I think it's kind of, if everyone's poor, then a story like Willy Wonka, a little kid winning this thing, is very appealing because that's everyone's wish. But everyone's like kind of fat on the farm, then you want to see something a little dangerous and spicy.
I don't know. I to me, the phones ruined everything, and perhaps you as a Samsung spokesperson cannot confirm.
I'm no longer under their employ,
right,
so I can
see.
speak honestly about it.
I really, this goes into my deep conspiracy theories, but I just feel we don't have the sensitivity we did. This is not a new theory, obviously, but as a result of this incredible information, bad news dump that you get every day, people are really in. And I'm not speaking financially. I'm just speaking psychologically overloaded.
There's a lot of things in the marketplace that we, as ultimately primates, whose evolution kind of stopped a while ago, we're not equipped for. So sugar, we're just not equipped for that.
Do you still not eat any sugar?
I don't, but I had a bad run of it. I'm newly back to not eating sugar since January 1st.
What are your other dietary? Are you vegan now or no?
Oh, it's so annoying if I had to list it. But I'm on an anti-inflammation diet for my arthritis, and it's no eggs, no dairy, no gluten. The only meat is turkey, lamb, and bison.
Is that because of your blood type, or what is that?
I won't even try to defend the science behind it. I went to an Ayurvedic cleanse, and they told me to eat this. I tried it; it actually worked. When I do follow that, my arthritis is non-existent. Wow. When I cheat, which is regularly, it flares up.
Oh,
so
interesting.
Whatever.
Yeah.
So also they've hooked people up to brain monitoring devices and watch them use a slot machine, right? So you get a reward dump, right? For which is what you would get when you found fruit in the past and you're wandering through the jungle. Likewise, this device is just triggering our pleasure center. It's giving us a little dopamine dump. And how on earth could we resist that? We can't resist. It's like finding a fucking apple every 2 feet you walk in the woods. So there's some stuff that we're just especially vulnerable to. Yeah. And I think, this phone is one of them.
But, I'm sure you have a version of this with two little girls, but to see, the
kids on
the
it,
teens, it really has changed how they interact or don't.
Part of me is like, I hate it. And then the other part of me is like, okay, so we're moving into a world which is AI and automation, and 95% of people are going to be unemployed. And so we're training them to live their life through this technology, which is probably what their lives will be at some point.
I have become my father in that growing up, he was like, microwaves, they're bad for you. VCRs, you'll just watch more TV. And I was like, oh my God, Dad, why? I won't watch more. I'll just watch better. And then now I'm like, we are not having one of those boxes that's listening to you in the house.
Yes,
we are not.
Yes.
And I don't turn my phone on until I shut it off at a certain time. I turn it on, I don't keep it on. I'm fighting it.
Daily, more and more stuff makes zero sense to me. Yeah. So that's how I know I'm getting older.
Right.
Yeah. Things are starting to, I feel the way people felt about the Beatles. in the 60s
Yes.
parents, you know.
Yes.
And I go, oh, well, here it is.
Yes.
I guess everyone it was going to come eventually.
Yeah. And although Peter's son listens to a lot of good music.
Yeah.
A lot of like
that
old
can
music has come
transcend.
back. Yeah.
My kids already like Hall & Oates. They love Hall
Sure.
& Oates and their babies.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Lauren, I love you so much.
love you
I'm
too.
so glad that you came in, and I'm really
too.
excited you're joining the podcast permanently, as you declared
Yeah.
publicly.
I'll
and
bring
we'll
you
hold
like
to it.
snacks or something.
Yeah, great. And next time, maybe you don't bring your own coffee, and I can make you one,
Okay.
which would be a great offering on my part to
Oh, wow.
you. I would feel it would raise my self-esteem to
I
provide
see.
for you.
I know. But do I get a mug though?
Yeah, you can have a mug.
All right.
They're like
Even
12
though I
bucks.
didn't
They're
bring
like
my own.
14, they're 17 bucks.
All right.
How are you doing financially? It's a
Charge my-
sliding scale.
Do you accept Venmo?
Yeah, I'm just going to call your guy. I'll
Yeah,
call your
okay,
accountant.
great.
We'll see what we can get for this. But I love you. Thanks for coming by, and I hope
Okay.
you do again.
I will.
Because I got a million more questions.
I could talk to you all day.
We will.
Okay.
Love you.
Love you.
Stay tuned if you'd like to hear my good friend and producer Monica Padman point out the many errors in the podcast you just heard. Monica Padman, fact check time for Lauren Graham. Did we make any blunders?
Yes, a few.
Oh, shit.
Just a few.
Okay.
Lauren couldn't remember Jeff's name on the show Flipping Out, and his name is Jeff Lewis.
Jeff Lewis, national treasure.
Yes.
Yeah.
We also talked about Chaz Dean. We talked about him for a good bit.
Sure.
And
Once you get on the topic of Chastine, it's hard to get off.
Yes. I had recalled that he was wearing two of something in his billboard.
Okay.
And it is two vests, though I actually think it's probably one vest upon closer examination that has but it looks like two vests. The one vest is made to look like a vest on top of a vest.
Vest on vest on vest.
It looks crazy.
Okay.
Okay.
Although we would love to have Chaz Dean as a sponsor
yeah.
of this show.
When?
It's a great product. I have used it before and I did like it.
And we like it when people wear two vests.
Fuck yeah.
It's
The more
ballsy.
vests, the better.
Yeah. I think you need to take just a second to apologize to Neil Lane. Okay. I mean, he's huge. He's huge.
Yeah.
And you kind of made it sound like he was just like some jeweler who ended up.
Well, listen, I'll tell you
for
why I'm
K
not going to
jewelers.
apologize to Neil Lane and I'm not going to tell the whole story because I don't want to be liable for anything.
Okay.
Suffice to say, when I had bought an engagement ring for Kristen, I was going to then wait a couple months to give it to her. And then somehow this story hit the tabloids that I had bought an engagement ring. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to say I'm not going to apologize to Neil Lane. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not accusing him of anything officially, but I'm just saying there will not be a forthcoming apology from me.
Okay.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah. I'll give you the full rundown
sure
when
you
these
will.
mics are ice cold. Turned.
Okay. And just real quick, another thing about Neil Lane, even though you probably don't want to hear anything about him.
No, he's actually a nice guy. He is a nice guy. I want to say that.
Yeah, he's the jeweler of The Bachelor.
Mm-hmm.
So I like him too.
Okay.
And I think he's just involved with K Jewelers. I don't think he's like the face of K Jewelers.
You're not going to walk into a mall in Minneapolis, step into K Jeweler and find
he
Neil
doesn't
there.
work the desk there. No.
Okay.
No, I think it's like when Vera Wang has a collection
Target.
at Kohl's.
Oh, okay. Or Miss Sony at Target.
Yes, exactly. Okay, and then you sang the K Jewelers theme song, and you said every wish begins with K, and it's every kiss begins with K.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, good distinction to make.
Yeah.
Every kiss begins with K.
Yeah, you did.
Oh, you know what? It's not until this very moment that I realize why they say that. Because the word kiss begins with the letter K. I've never made that fucking
Me
connection.
either.
You haven't either?
No.
I've always just been like, what an arrogant statement. Every kiss begins with K Jewelers. No, it
Wow.
doesn't. They are literally correct.
They thought it through.
Every kiss begins with the letter K.
Wow. So you guys both talk about speaking in tongues. This is also called glossolalia.
Ooh.
That's the real
a
term.
little close to glossolabia, which is not a good term.
Is that real?
No, but lalia sounds like labia. What was it? Glossolalia?
Glossolalia.
Glossolalia.
Your brain is just always on that.
yeah.
It really is.
That's right.
So speaking in tongues is a New Testament phenomena where a person speaks in a language that is unknown to him previously.
Or her.
Correct. Thank
Yeah.
you.
You're such a misogynist.
I really
I'm glad I'm here to represent females.
Mental possession.
It's not the Lord talking through you?
Mental possession. Some
An apparition?
yes.
Okay.
Some heavenly being
Mhm.
is speaking through you.
It's weird that they are heavenly, so I assume their powers are nearly unlimited, yet they can't speak English, which most people can learn in a pinch.
yeah.
You know, there's a carrot at the end of that.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. So speaking of that, so you said you think God doesn't speak English because he wouldn't want to like tip his hat to who he liked the most.
Did I say that?
Yeah.
Okay.
But truthfully, he would be speaking Hebrew if he was speaking a language.
Well, if he's the
probably.
God of the Old Testament,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, but that's the God that speaks in tongues.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the same God.
Yeah. Okay.
So he would probably be speaking in Hebrew.
I hope we don't get a fatwa or something now
I know.
attached to
What's
us.
going to
Yeah.
happen?
You just waded us out into some very treacherous waters.
I'm excited to
You-
see what happens.
This just in, Monica Padman says God speaks Hebrew.
Well, I'm willing to defend that if they come back to me.
Okay.
You, in talking about fact checks and all the data that you spout,
Mhm.
you said the distance between here and the sun is 93 million miles.
Which is also known as 1 astronomical unit, 1 AU.
Mm-hmm. And the moon, you said, is 180,000 miles.
I'm less positive about that claim.
Yeah, you're wrong about that one.
Okay.
That one is 238,900.
Oh, well, that's great, though. 180 to 230. I can live
You
with
were
that.
close.
Yeah. I mean,
But
I
you-
expected to be off by a factor of 10 almost.
Okay. Well, just commit it to memory next time you say it.
Two what? But I got to imagine that must either be an average that you read, because obviously it's at different distances. No, maybe it's not. Well, the Earth is not perfectly spherical. Oh, fuck it. Who knows? I feel like there's got to be times where it's further and closer.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Probably not by that big of a distance. Although maybe.
Who
'cause
knows?
The universe is big. 238,900.
Okay.
Okay.
You know what? Let's split the difference. I said 186. You're saying 230. I'm just in the future. I'm going to say it's about 200,000 miles away.
No,
I feel like that's
say what
easier.
it is.
Okay.
That's the whole point of this.
All right.
Oh my God. Okay. Oh, this is really interesting. So the aptitude test that her dad took, I looked into this. I don't know if he took this exact same one,
Right.
but there is an aptitude test called DLAB, Defense Language Aptitude Battery Test.
Mm.
It's a military test to measure one's aptitude to learn a foreign language.
Mm-hmm.
It consists of 126 multiple choice questions. And then there are these different categories. Like category 1 is Dutch, French, Italian, Portuguese, and Spanish. Category 2 is German only, which is interesting. Category 3 is Czech, Greek, Hebrew, Persian, Polish, Russian, Slavic, Thai, Turkish, Ukrainian, Belarusian, and Vietnamese.
Ooh, that's the one you'd want to crush. 'cause
That's
that
the one
opens
he
you up
did
to-
crush.
Wow. So he could go anywhere.
Uh-huh. And then the fourth one is Arabic, Chinese, Japanese, and Korean. I think that's the hardest one. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, again, we're back into some hot, deep,
Exactly.
treacherous, shark-infested waters.
But you get different numbers.
Did you take this test?
No, I want to.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be.
Was it
I'm gonna
available?
get 0. I'm so bad at languages.
I'll be half of whatever you get.
No, I'm really.
You just heard I had to cheat at Spanish to get through it in
well, I
college.
didn't cheat, but I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Spanish, but anyway. So
We love all people.
everyone's
but,
great. So you score a number for each category.
Mhm.
For the military, if they're like sending you somewhere, they look at your numbers. If you've made a certain number on a certain thing, you like qualify to be able to go. Anyway,
Cool.
yeah.
That is neat.
So I looked on a world map to see how she could have gone from Japan to the United States while also going through Russia.
Oh,
Yeah,
I thought it was bizarre, right?
it
that
doesn't
you-
make sense.
It doesn't make any sense. Okay.
It's very close to Russia, but it would be going the wrong way.
That's like a real janky internet deal on a flight. It's like
Yeah.
you can go for $400 cheaper, but you got to connect through Moscow.
go the opposite direction and then come all the way through.
Yeah.
Okay, so you asked if her mom did a course in miracles.
Course of Is it Course on or Course of Miracles?
It is
My father was into this. It was
course.
people who were in AA in Michigan in the 90s seemed to really also like Course of Miracles.
I think it's I think you said Course of Miracles and I corrected it, but now I'm wondering if I'm wrong, but I think I'm right. So Course in Miracles, also known as The Course, was a big book in 1976. That was like a self-study curriculum and led
That
to
sounds right.
spiritual transformation, right?
Mm-hmm. That sounds.
And your dad liked it?
Yeah, I loved it. They were very into now, I believe, and he had a charm around his neck, his necklace, and it was a clock, and it spelt now. Where 12 would be was an N, where 6 was a W, and then where 9 was an N, and where 3 was a W. So you whether you read up to down, it said now, or left to right, it said now. Yeah.
Wow.
I think they sold a lot of wall clocks too that said now.
Wow. It is Course in Miracles. I just double checked.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you for pointing that out in case someone wants to take on the curriculum.
They might want to.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said cable came out when you were a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Technically, cable TV came out in 1948. And you were a kid. So you're right.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. You just want to confirm I was correct. Yeah.
The first
Zing.
few decades, it was used pretty much exclusively for just existing broadcast network systems that couldn't just receive airways.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, but then
So that's that.
that's pretty much that. You're thinking of like MTV and original programming.
Yeah,
Yeah, that started in the 70s.
Okay. The first thing I remember coming out was On TV and It TV, and they broadcasted over the airwaves on what became the Fox affiliate, WKBD. And at 8 o'clock, it scrambled, and if you had this converter, the On TV converter, it turned that scrambled signal into a movie.
Oh, that's cool. You brought up the Alexander technique yet again. You bring this up a lot,
I
okay?
know.
And I've been meaning to correct you for a long time. Because you said that Kristen
Would breathe into
people's mouths doing the Alexander technique.
in their sweatsuits.
Yeah.
Early in the morning in college.
And I've been skeptical of this because I was also a theater major in school, and
Well, don't
we learned
brag.
I'm gonna. And we also learned the Alexander technique, but I never remember breathing in anyone's mouth.
Okay.
So I looked it up because I couldn't remember. Sorry, schooling. But yeah, no, the Alexander technique is like a physical, not breathing in your mouth, but like
Stretching,
squatting.
breathing,
Exactly. It's-
breathing in each other's mouths.
Yes, it's how to avoid it's how to avoid muscular tension while performing in the physical space.
Okay.
So
in the
maybe
future,
they did.
I do want you to correct me, and I do want to learn from this experience. But when I have a fantasy, okay, that's clearly just a fantasy about young co-eds breathing in each other's mouths, wearing sweatsuits early in the morning, hormones at a 10. When I have a fantasy like that, you're not helping me by destroying that. This is a unicorn that I want to believe in.
I'm sorry, but I have to fix you.
I
You
know
say
it's-
this so often. You talk about the Alexander
Well, think
technique.
how much business I've probably driven to. There's probably like 60-year-old divorced men now taking Alexander technique,
Ew.
assuming that they're going to get to breathe in someone's mouth.
This is exactly why we can't let this happen.
What
No.
if I get sued by some divorcee who took many courses and didn't once breathe in another
Exactly.
person's mouth?
I'm really sorry to
First
squash
wife,
your
okay.
fantasy.
I understand.
You can come up with more. I think I believe in you to do that.
All right.
You said Essie Hinton was 14 when she wrote The Outsiders, and she may have been when she wrote it, but it was published when she was 17.
Oh, okay.
Susan
Still
Eloise.
fucking awesome.
Did you know that's what it was? She stood for?
No. I bet when I was younger I did, but I certainly don't now. I follow her on Twitter, and I when I went to follow her, it said follow back, or it said follows you, and I almost did a
Threw up.
backflip.
Yeah.
I mean, she really introduced me to reading, to loving to read those books
Yeah.
about young men fighting and falling in love.
Yeah.
Tex, Against All. No, that's a different movie. Tex, The Outsiders, a Rumblefish.
Stand By Me.
No, that's Stephen King, I believe.
Okay.
Anyway, she's a great she's the original YA, young adult,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Phenom.
You made kind of a grumpy noise when Lauren said that she was in a cool a cappella group.
Okay.
And there are cool a cappella groups.
There's
I
not.
just yes,
There's not a
there
single one.
are. Have you
Okay.
seen Pitch Perfect?
The film?
Yeah.
No, but I'm so happy for everyone involved because it's wildly successful. And Elizabeth Banks is cool.
And they're good movies, and the a cappella groups, some of them are cool. Okay? And the a cappella group at Barnard, which she went to, I think is called Bacante.
Let's really quick for the sake of this argument establish some kind of metric for cool. Now you're going to have to do it for females,
Okay.
and I'm going to do it for guys.
Okay.
And of course, as a young person, that metric has to be success with the opposite sex. I'm sorry.
Sure.
And what I would argue is that never in the history of this world did someone come up to a lady at a bar and say, "I am a member of the Whoopincoffs," or whatever the heck it is. Wolf and Puffs.
You're wrong. I'm going to correct
and
you
then
on
that person said, "Ooh, tell me more."
That's not true.
That's not true? Okay.
Not for the females.
Well, hit me with the female metric.
You're saying the metric, but it does happen.
You're saying that there are females that they learn that the guy is in a choir, and
An
then
acapella
they
group at
need
a
to
college.
find the closest dark room to make out in.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, it does happen. Have you ever-
bring one to this attic. and I'll-
Have you ever been to an a cappella concert? Have you ever?
No.
I have.
But okay. Well, I don't want to interrupt you. Tell me, is it awesome?
Yeah, they're
Okay.
very cool, and it's very impressive. And
And very sexy.
women are attracted to men in their element. That's true.
That's true. I would agree with that.
So
But can we just again? You cannot. The metric of cool cannot be the weird niche that's attending the events. That's not helpful to us. That's like saying, guys who love Dungeons and Dragons are super cool and they're getting laid all the time because at a Dungeons and Dragons conference in an arena somewhere, there's a lot of fecundity. That's not
no,
a
some
good
a cappella
example.
groups at certain schools are so
They crush.
well known. Yeah, they're a big part of the school, and people attend that aren't in like corresponding a cappella groups. I wasn't in an a cappella group, and I ended up at 2 or 3 of those.
Okay, and you were
performances.
hot for many of the male performers?
Yeah, I thought it was hot.
Okay. All right.
They do contemporary.
Great. So guys,
songs.
forget the muscle car and start working on your vibrato. Vibrato. What is it?
Is that vibrato?
Vibrato. Okay.
Does it?
Intimidate
does
me because
it-
I can't sing?
Yeah, or does it? Do you feel threatened by this because you have spent so much time
Trying to
in
be
your
attractive
masculine?
to the opposite sex.
Yes, by masculine standards.
Yeah.
So-
Truth be told, I think, as much as I'd like to think that all my success derived from my arrival on a motorcycle, I'm the more objective side of myself knows it was probably being able to make someone laugh.
Yeah.
So but so I could admit that, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
There's the version I think I would like people to be attracted to, but that's probably not what they're attracted to in me.
Yeah, you're right.
They don't care that I'm missing a
Well, the
knuckle on my
males
right
are.
hand. Yes, but
Men
I'm
are.
not trying to attract other
Correct.
men. Yeah.
By the way, you do want men to be
I
attracted
do.
to you.
Yeah. Well, in general, I think we could say I like to flirt with every human on planet Earth.
Yeah.
So, I don't exclude any gender.
Great. So you said, and you just said it again, that
Mm-hmm.
Harvard has an a cappella group called the Whoopincoffs. Okay. I have no idea why
God.
you think that.
Well, now that you said it, I realize whooping cough is a bad disorder.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's tuberculosis.
Okay.
And
Isn't it Yale? That's the wolf and poop or something like that.
oh,
Yes,
so-
yeah,
okay.
because my lawyer, Jamie Feldman, who's in Brothers Justice, which you saw,
Mm-hmm.
he is a proud member of the whooping coughs.
Okay. Well, you had said Harvard, so I did some research into
Okay.
Harvard groups. Hold on, though. I want to find.
I'm worried that our female listeners right now are getting so agitated downstairs with all this talk about these a cappella singers.
You're worried or you're excited?
I'm worried because now that I know how hot they are, according to you in this new metric, I am concerned that our female listeners are having to pull over on the side of the road
They probably are.
or find their
Good
way
for
into
them.
Look, if I could give that gift to anyone, I would be.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a victory.
Okay. Yale's a cappella group is the Whiff and Poofs.
Uh huh.
Okay.
Easily confused with
Harvard has many, not the whooping coughs, and they have 14.
Oh, fuck this. I can't bear to listen to all 14.
I'm gonna.
No, you're
Yes.
not. No, you're
Can
not.
I please?
No, you can do
Please?
4. No.
4, my favorite 4.
People will
How can I
unsubscribe
choose?
if you read 14 a cappella groups. All right, go ahead.
I'll do
Let's
it
see.
so fast.
Okay.
Okay. The callbacks, the cliff notes, all female, the din and tonics, fallen angels, glee club, light, key change, the crocodilios,
Oh,
the
fuck.
low keys, the opportunes, the rad cliff pitches, under construction, baritones, box jazz, and Shawnee. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but that's the Jewish affiliated one.
Ooh, I'm going to be walking down the street one day and someone from the Whooping Coughs is going to come just belt me in the nose. They're going to cold cock me for talking so disparagingly about these groups.
They're going
and
to
I'll
be
deserve
upset
it.
that you are still calling it the whooping
Yes.
cough.
Okay, next fact. We got really bogged down in the
You said that 10% of the auditions you went on required dancing to no music. But do you really think it was 10%?
No,
'Cause
it wasn't. It
it was
wasn't.
probably 1%, right?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
But boy, 1% dancing, it feels like 50% because it's so uncomfortable.
Lauren did 113 shows on Broadway, as you said, but they also did 28 previews. So that's 28 additional shows.
Ooh.
That's a
Okay,
lot.
so in the 140s there.
You guys were talking about therapy and the kind of therapy where you have to talk to your younger self. And that's called ACT, Acceptance and Commitment Therapy.
Oh, ACT.
It's a-
ACT, ACT.
It's a part of behavioral therapy. It's a section of that.
And any Alexander technique in that?
Probably.
Breathe
You
into
have to
the
breathe
mouth
in
of
your
your baby.
own your own mouth.
Baby version of you's mouth.
Oh, you guys were talking about the reward dump that happens with devices, the
uh-huh.
Vegas-y models that our devices are based off of. So I just wanted to send people to Tristan Harris, who
Is what?
is the guy who worked at Google.
Oh, Google. Yes, he made the rounds.
Yeah, and he's hot on this topic and very interesting because he worked at Google and he knows a lot about these ethics.
And triggering your reward center, right?
Yep.
In your brain.
Mhm.
Yeah, we can't compete.
You said 95% of people are going to be unemployed under AI and automation. And I really looked and I couldn't find 95% as the number. Are you talking about Yuval Harari's book?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always appreciate it when you pronounce his name because I can't do it. So thank you for saying
Yuval
that. I say
Harari.
Yovel. And I don't even try the last name.
Yuval, I believe.
Okay.
Yuval
Yeah.
Harari. But he has a lot to say on this. He was on Sam Harris.
Uh-huh.
But I don't think he says 95%.
Okay.
He does say that it's going to replace a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
Many.
Hopefully not actors.
Probably not actors.
What if they replaced podcasters and you listen to literally 2 robots talk to each other? Could you imagine? Was that it?
That's it.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And also, again, just a quick reminder to sprint out to Amazon.com to buy Lauren's new book. Get in your car, drive to the closest Amazon, and buy her new book, which is called, Monica?
In conclusion, don't worry about it.
In conclusion, don't worry about it.